You are live. That's what it says on the screen. Good morning to you. Uh, it is absolutely miserable here, just rainy here in North Texas this morning. Hopefully, it's a beautiful day where you are as we begin part six of Saving Disney History with, um, at this point, it's a fact. He is a professor, Professor Ed McCray, the Disney professor. He's got so much knowledge. I'm so grateful to know him and to get these lessons that, in fact, Ed and I were talking before we started here this morning. I was telling him that this is just such important information that he is sharing that so many people just aren't aware of. And it's my hope and his, I believe, is that this 12-part series, I'm going 24 hours with Ed. Because it's a couple hours each show, a 12-part series where we're about to hit the halfway mark. It's part 6 here today, and I just told him this is a treasure trove, man. All the stuff that you're providing for people to come and find in the future. This is Ed. You're just a wealth of knowledge that's so enjoyable, and I'm particularly excited for today's lesson, which is the Disney that never was. This is going to be exciting. It's going to, I think it's going to be equal parts exciting and sad at the same time. The
Yeah,
stuff
so
that we
it'll be
were wrong.
sad.
Yeah, yeah. But before we get started on the Disney that never was, kind of give us a reset where we left off
Well,
from part 5 last week.
we left off with Walt's patriotism, and we'd been talking about his faith and everything and how everything changed. And now that we know the background of what his bedrock was, this is how he did his process of coming up with some of his stories that were in the films and everything. And the people that were there after he died, some of them kept this going afterwards, and some of the films that they did didn't get made as well. But you'll know the process. And the stuff that Elon Musk released this week, where it shows how they're doing all the stories. They now this started in the 90s. They wanted to have characters that appeal to different demographics. That started around the time of Pocahontas as well. They'd have executives come in and they're like, well, we need a character that sells toys to this demographic. We have to have this demographic and everything. And it wasn't like that before that. And now it's got to where they have to have 50% gay characters or something. Well, that stuff was all broke down.
Yeah, I should have printed up that cheat sheet. That was it was one of those things that, and if you don't know what Ed's referring to, Elon Musk was provided kind of behind the scenes. I call it a cheat sheet, like a DEI cheat sheet for Disney employees of all the things that they're required to, and every single bullet point was underrepresented groups. You got to have this number, this percentage. It was just
And they have to
gross,
be, if
honestly.
it's a series, they have to be a regular character. It's not enough just to have a
Right,
character walk in.
right.
And that's what they define the character by what they look like and everything. And it's
Mhm.
not about the personality anymore.
No, no. And so this was an important piece of evidence. Again, shocking but not shocking, I think it's fair to say.
Well, I've
Uh,
known about it for a few years, and that's
uh-huh.
their hiring practices as well. They want to have 50% underrepresented groups in the population of employees. And if there's not that many people that are specialized in those fields, you're never going to have 50%. By definition, they're underrepresented because it's a minority group. I mean,
It's magic.
I mean, there's nothing racist or bigoted
Mhm.
about that. It's just a fact.
Facts are facts. Okay, brother. Well, take us down the road of the Disney that never was, and I'm looking forward to this
Well,
today,
I'll
man.
tell you how I got interested in this. Is interested in this in the first place. One of the first CD I ever got was a CD set, and this is the book that went with it, and this is about the songs that weren't used in The Little Mermaid, Aladdin, and Beauty and the Beast. And before that, you think of these films that they're always made as they are. You don't think about how people craft these by hand. And then a few Christmases after that, I got this book, and it's the book that's called The Disney That Never Was. And while some of the projects we're going to talk about are in that book, a lot of them aren't. And a lot of them have been expanded upon over the years. And where I was going to start today is we'll show you some of the characters that are deleted characters that are in the films that exist as cameos. So if you want to bring up the first image there, I'll tell you who we have here.
Okay, let's see if I can do this, man. Here we go. Hang on. All right, and okay, there we go. I got this, Ed. Hang on.
We'll just keep scrolling through them, and I'll tell you about each one.
All right, did that show up properly? No, it did not.
Yeah. Well, that's the main thing there. But at the top there, that you can see from there, that's the Aladdin's mother. She was cut from the movie, and she's in the movie. She has a cameo in the movie.
Hang on. How do I get the? Hang on a second. Technical difficulties. Please stand by. I get this. Hang on.
But I put those drawings that were in there because you'll see that this is the design of that character and how they do this sometimes with characters that don't make it in the movie. They'll cameo them in there.
There we go.
Easter egg.
All right, hang on. Which one? Do you want me to start at the top there with Emperor's New Groove or no?
Oh, we can do that one first.
You want to do that? Okay, sorry.
Okay.
That's the one that came up. Sorry.
That's okay.
I was telling Ed before we started today. I said, bro, I got all these tabs open. I am ready to go rock and roll, and then wonk wonk. Okay,
this is the deleted ending for the Emperor's New Groove, and the reason it was deleted was because Sting didn't like it because it wasn't eco-friendly. Because he builds his castle on the mountain next door, and this is a superior ending. Everyone that worked on it agrees it ties back to all the jokes, and this is where John Goodman tells him that's the hill that really sings. Now they cut to the castle where he's built it. You just scroll on through them.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You can just click left. You don't have to open each one.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, sorry. I got you.
That's okay.
All
See,
right.
That's where he built his house, and the pool is shaped like a llama.
Oh, yeah. How cool is that, man?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he's playing volleyball. Now, those are the guards that got turned into animals it was a gag, but they never got turned back, and they're there playing volleyball. That's Cusco there.
Yeah. Oh, man. This would have been fun, dude.
Now he's making balloon animals with the little squirrel that made the balloons and popped them.
I cannot believe of all the reasons to not have this ending. It just wasn't eco-friendly.
There he cooked hamburgers, and that's the waitress from the restaurant. He's giving her the hamburgers to serve.
Wow.
You remember he was a stingy emperor, and he was going to tear the mountain home down, and now here he's limboing with one of the animals there because he's enjoying his new life. He's sharing his wealth with the community now because he was a stingy guy.
It wasn't green enough, though.
Yeah.
See?
But he changed, so now he's a giving person. He's not selfish. Now, what's going on here, John Goodman comes up, and he says, "You're not going to be one of those noisy neighbors that plays music, are you?" And then Cusco says, "No, for fun, he likes to tie himself to a log and go over a waterfall." And then they walk off into the sunset. Well, I'm going to try that sometime. And then just go to the next one there.
Okay. Oh, my goodness. Aw.
And that's at the end of the song. All the characters, give them a hug, and they're all, and now there's the punchline. Who's making dinner? There's Kronk making dinner, and he says, "I'm going to need a head count for dessert." And then the last shot, the angel and the devil shows up, and they say, "We've got you covered, big guy." And that was the end of the movie.
Gosh.
And they didn't do that because of the not being eco-friendly. Sting wrote all the songs, and when it was going to be a different movie, and that's probably why they placated to him. But on the intro, this was only ever on the 2-disc DVD version, and on the intro for that, the directors are there. They kind of are backhandedly insulting Sting because they're like, "We didn't know what we were doing. We're sorry."
Wow. Just okay. The reasoning on that is so dumb.
Well, I wish that was the ending of the movie because it made more sense, tied back to all the jokes in the movie.
Yeah.
But that's what I mean about how things have changed and how they care
Just the
more
ruin
about
stuff, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so where are we going now? Am I going to folder number 1, sir?
Yeah, number 1 with the characters.
Okay, let's see if I can do this properly on the first try. And boom. Is that where you want to be?
Well, I'm waiting for it to load up there.
Oh,
yeah.
Are you not seeing it?
Okay. Yeah, and just keep going.
Keep going. Yes, sir. All righty. Cool.
That's the design for the mother. She was in the movie.
Okay. All right.
The movie was about making your mother proud at that when they first proposed it.
And remind us what movie this is again?
This is Aladdin.
Oh yeah. Oh wow. Okay, I see now. Wow, man.
That's kind of a close up. They do all these design work things to figure out what the character's going to look like. See, there's the whole cast at that time. Jafar had a red costume then. They changed it because they said he looked like a fire engine. And you can see the mother there between the carpet and the Sultan.
Yeah. So what happened? Why did we? I don't.
They
remember.
said that it was boring to have her there, and there she is at the window. She says, "You're getting into trouble today, aren't we, Aladdin?" In the movie, and that's the mother design.
Okay.
And back then Aladdin was younger, and that's what he looked like.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And they animated it so that now this one I discovered. This is in the Jasmine folder on the DVD, but that's not Jasmine. In Howard Ashman's original treatment, he had a girl next door that they would fall in love and that'd be the girlfriend. And he said she was a Judy Garland type, and that's her.
Oh wow!
And people don't know because they don't know the Disney that never was.
Right.
Now, this character was going to be in Beauty and the Beast, but Chip replaced him. He's the music box, and he was mute. He didn't say anything. He played music, and it didn't work in the storyboards. They cut him out of the movie, but he's still in the movie in a cameo.
Oh really?
Now you'll see.
Okay, here we go. Hang on. Oh wait, sorry.
That's him as well, but yeah. And then, well, that's a comic book. Yeah, I think you skipped it there.
Oh, did I really?
There's a picture with Lumiere. Well, maybe I have him numbered wrong. There's a picture with Lumiere in the movie, and the music box is right next to him.
Yeah,
there it is. See, he's right there on the right.
I like that. Let me go back to that.
The comic
that's
book?
Interesting. Yeah, let me zoom in on that.
He's in the comic book. That's why I put that in there. Now, the comic books were made on the lot back then, and they knew about it back then.
Man, that's cool.
So, but there you have another cameo right there. The music box.
Whoa.
Now this is for the movie Atlantis, and there was a character that movie, it's about a team of different people from different backgrounds, and they go to the center of the earth and they find Atlantis. Now the guy the second one from the left, that character's name was Zoltan. He was a magician. They cut him out of the movie. But you just keep going through there, you can see how he ended up looking.
Okay. Oh,
there he is. There in the middle.
A little different.
Yeah. Well, I'm just giving you an idea how the characters evolve before we go into the films. And there he is again.
Yeah.
And there's one last one of Zoltan. And they kept him in the story reel for years. And now this character's in The Emperor's New Groove as a cameo. He was in the original version. They cut him out, but you'll see where the cameo is.
Okay.
This was there he is again. That character's going to be voiced by Harvey Weinstein. Now, he's on the candelabra there. That's the closest shot I could get to show you. But you see in the center there of the table? Yep. That's him.
Sure do. Oh, wow. Okay.
This character was in Sleeping Beauty. Cinderella. This was the music teacher when they do that Sing Sweet Nightingale song. They were going to have a music teacher training the stepsisters. And he's known as Professor Lafouf. But he's still in Cinderella.
Wow. Okay. I'm gonna make this. Hang on a second. Let me make this. You know what? There's another effect on here. Hang on. Everybody, bear with me. We'll get there. We'll get there, y'all. Hang on. Which one is it? That's the one I'm looking for. Ta-da! Having a rough day, huh? Okay, there we go. So I think that's a little bit better. Okay, continue, please.
We'll just keep going, and you'll see where he's at in the movie.
Okay. All right.
This would have been what the scene was, teaching him to sing, and there he is in the movie. He's the conductor at the party with the waltz. That's how, and no one knows he's there because they don't know the story of the character that was removed.
Oh, I see. I got you. Yeah. Okay. Whoa, that's an interesting film.
This character is from the Jungle Book. This is Rocky the Rhino, and in our links we'll have a link to. He had a song in the movie. He hung out with the vultures. And they recorded it and everything, but Walt cut it out because he got annoyed by the voice of the character. It was an actor named Frank Fontaine. He was known for playing a character called Crazy Guggenheim. And he had, well, you'll see in our links.
I just see merchandise opportunities with that goofy looking thing.
You might not know this, but the vultures in the Jungle Book, they were based on the Beatles.
I did not know that.
That's why they have. they all have the haircut thing, and that's what he looked like, the actor. But
Very similar.
but he had a goofy voice like that. You see how they made it look like him?
Yes.
He's on the wall there in the background between Walt and Roy. That's what the storyboards are.
Okay.
So that's an Easter egg if you're looking in the Disney history books.
Okay.
This is a character that used to exist in Fantasia, and they've erased that she exists, and we'll have that in our links. You can find it. That one's called Sunflower, the Black Centaur.
Yeah, and that's an important point you just made. All this stuff, it's exhaustive. What Ed does is he sends the links to me of the stuff that he is referencing in these shows, in these lessons, and so if you go to the description, there's a lot of this stuff. It's fascinating links that he sends. And last week, I'm going to tell him this, Ed. Last week, you had so many things you referenced. Y'all, if you look at the description of part 5 and you go scroll down, you'll see how maybe it's spaced weirdly or something like that. I had to trim it and to get it down to, there's a 5,000 character limit, and we used every last available space on the YouTube descriptions below on part 5. So anyway, just a lot of stuff.
We don't have as many this week, because I spent 3 days scanning things for this show.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I'm going to pause here because I'm glad you said that. You put so much time and effort into these presentations. I'm so grateful for it. All these pictures we show here, you have to go individually and scan those in, put them in a folder to share with me.
DVDs, you got to find them everywhere.
Or you got and then you have to do a screenshot off of there. I don't know how you do it, man. God bless you.
Oh, well, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so this stuff is out of it now? Like, they took this stuff out, huh?
Yeah, and one of the links we'll have, you can see how they digitally erased her in the film. Like, the flowers are just hanging in midair now, where she's at. This is the other one. Her name is... I can't remember the name now. I lost my page. But she has people think that that's Sunflower, and it's not. Otika. That's what her name is.
Okay.
And she's in... you can see what this looked like at the time. And Eisner wouldn't reissue Fantasia unless this was all cut out. That was the deal he made with Roy. And Floyd Norman, the black animator, he was against them cutting these characters out of the film. He worked with the animators. He knows they're not racist.
Right.
You have a black character now, and people think it's racist. Now, this character was who became Jessie, the yodeling cowgirl in Toy Story 2. She was Senorita Cactus, and she was a villain.
Oh, that would have been fun. Which, by the way, when I overshoot on some of these, I'm not getting a back button for some reason. So that's why when I get to another thing, we can't go back if you're still talking about it, because for some reason that option is not on my screen. Oh, there it is. Okay, I got it. I'm sorry. I haven't zoomed in too far. Okay, cool. All right, there we go. Okay, so what was her name? Senorita what?
Senorita Cactus, and she was the female character. She's going to be a villain. I have the script for this of Toy Story 2, what it was going to be before John Lasseter got involved, and it wasn't as good as the version we have.
Oh.
Like the climax was Al was chasing them with his car, Woody and Buzz, and so he saw them alive, and Woody's hat got in Al's exhaust and got ruined. And
are you seeing this? Now I don't have the right button. What is happening, man?
I don't know.
It's all on my end.
Anyway.
I'll fix this. Hang on. Keep going here. I'll catch up to you.
You're going to the next folder for Alice there. I'll tell.
So that was the last one, huh?
That was the last one.
Oh no. No wonder there wasn't a right button, Malinak. Okay, hang on a second. So now we're gonna go.
These shows are more fun because we're doing them live.
That's cool. Yeah. This is my first day, y'all. So bear with me here. Hang on a second. All right. So Alice's day.
Alice is next, but I'll tell you while you're doing that. I'll tell about one I don't have pictures for. Khrushchev at Disneyland. Where I talked about Khrushchev went to Disneyland last week. Walt wanted to make a movie about it because he saw that story as a triumph of freedom over tyranny. So Walt had set up this Khrushchev at Disneyland movie. It was going to start filming in 1967, but Walt died. But the last time Walt went on the studio, he went to see everybody. He saw Peter Ustinov, and he was going to play Khrushchev. He's going to shave his head. He was in Blackbeard's Ghost. He played Blackbeard. And the script was going to be a comedy where Khrushchev was going to be dodging KGB agents and Secret Service so he could go to Disneyland and have a good time. And when Walt died, Roy shut it down because he thought it was a stupid story and just let it die in history. But I think it would have been a funny movie.
Right. Shout out to Big Tech for telling me in the chat there to just use the arrows on the keyboard, Malinak. Okay.
Oh, I didn't know that. Well, now Alice was Walt's first series, the Alice comedies.
Okay.
And that was a big hit. That's how he got started. That's why they're doing the 100th anniversary. It was because of these films. You just keep scrolling on through there, and I'll tell the story. When he decided to go into features, Mary Pickford suggested they do a full color feature length version of the Alice comedies, and she was going to play Alice as an adult. And a screen test was made, and I have pictures from the screen test here.
Is that it right there? Is that one of them with the cat?
Well, no, that was from the actual short. The next one that's in color, that's going to be the screen test.
Oh, shame on me.
Now,
wow.
Mary Pickford was an important actress at the time. She was married to Douglas Fairbanks. That was
Mickey looks angry.
Well, that's the Mickey doll that Walt took to Europe with him when he went to Europe as well.
Okay.
He'd take that places so people knew who he was.
I see.
And all that exists of the full color one is this one frame.
What?
And the reason they didn't make it is because Paramount Pictures did a version of Alice in Wonderland that bombed that year. So Walt abandoned making it. But he was part of United Artists was founded by Mary Pickford, Douglas Fairbanks, her husband, and Charlie Chaplin, and they took Walt under their wing as one of their own there. And they were like his childhood heroes, and here they were accepting him into their fold.
Well, okay. All right.
You want to open the Gremlins there? I'll tell the story.
Yeah, this is fun stuff. This will be fun. Here.
But I'll tell the story of the Hitchcock movie that didn't get made at Disneyland while you're doing that.
All right.
1961, Alfred Hitchcock wanted to make a movie about a blind jazz singer played by Jimmy Stewart, and he's blind. He gets a groundbreaking eye transplant. But on the donor's eyes is the last image the donor saw, the person that murdered him. And he wanted to have Jimmy Stewart at Disneyland, and that the murderer is at Disneyland, and Jimmy's trying to chase down the murderer. And the climax was going to be they were climbing up Cinderella's castle. So
why didn't that happen?
Because Walt saw Psycho, and the shower scene so disgusted him.
Oh no!
They didn't do it. And when they did 101 Dalmatians, the character of Jasper, there's Jasper and Horace that steal the Dalmatians. Jasper is a caricature of Alfred Hitchcock. And
wow.
The woke people attack those characters as being racist now. They try to say they're Jewish stereotypes, even though there's nothing to suggest they're Jewish or stereotypes. And Walt did let one movie get shot at Disneyland. It was called 40 Pounds of Trouble, and that one was done by, I think, Universal or Paramount. I forget which. And he did loan out Iworks to do the special effects for the birds for Hitchcock. And I don't know how that came about, but that was after this film would have been done. Now, for what I'm going to say here about the Gremlins here, Walt had courtroom stenographers on his staff, and they would sit in the story meetings and write down everything that was said. So we know everything that was said for all the films that were made and not made. And no other studio did that. No other studio kept notes or anything like that. And with it wasn't uncommon with products to get shelved as they couldn't figure out the story, or they would they had something like World War II happen, so he shelved a bunch of projects. And some of them would come back and get reworked, and some of them just stayed shelved. And this film was called The Gremlins, and it's the most merchandised Disney film that was never made.
Yeah, because I'm gonna let you do your presentation here. There's my Gremlins. What's that?
There's my Gremlins.
Yeah. Okay. So.
Now, the story was written by Roald Dahl, who did James and the Giant Peach and all those books, The Witches and everything. And this was the first children's story he wrote. He was a pilot in the RAF, and he wrote a story about the Gremlins. And Walt got sent the story, and because World War II shut down the animation studio, he saw this as an opportunity to make a fantasy film set in World War II. Because Bambi was the last feature film they made till Cinderella. All the others after that were those package features. And these are storyboards of what the actual film would have been, by the way. What you have up there now.
It's cool stuff. But wasn't there a push to? So they originally were going to do this, and then were you telling me something recently off air they almost brought it back. So, like, was this close twice to happening, or did I
Been close
misunderstand?
more than twice. They were going to try to bring it back in the 90s, but they didn't because Spielberg was going to do an animated series of the Gremlins movie from 1984. It would have been a series like the Gummy Bears if they'd done this back then in the early 90s.
Wow.
They did tests and everything for that back in the early 90s. But
Man.
the original one, they spent like 3 years developing this thing. And what Roald Dahl ended up becoming, he wrote horror stories after the war, and then he ended up writing horror stories for children, but people don't ever associate that with him.
Man,
But
this is.
you look at all of his stories, and they are horror stories.
Uh-huh.
So Walt got the rights to this in 1942, and Roald Dahl came to the studio, and Walt called him Stocky because he couldn't say the word rolled. And
that sounds like something I would do.
He was 6'6", and the Stocky was a character in the Rudyard Kipling's works, and his title was the resident gremlinologist. And the term gremlin was popular before World War II, and this is one of the reasons they didn't make the film, because they couldn't trademark or copyright the term gremlin, and other people were doing gremlin stories in World War II.
Oh wow.
The original, and the deal they made, the dolls' profits would go to the RAF to fund families that there's Walt with Roald Dahl and the Gremlin dolls that they made. The money would have gone to fund the families of pilots that got killed in the war.
Oh man. So these dolls that we're seeing here on the screen, did they ever?
Oh yeah, they were sold.
They sold those.
Yeah, the part of it was to establish copyright, and part of it was to get the public aware that they were making a Gremlins movie. People knew they were making it. Bob Hope wrote about them. He made a joke about it in one of his books that was printed in 1942.
Oh wow! So, do you know how many of these dolls were sold and how much they're worth today?
They're worth a lot, but I don't know how many were sold. The same people that made the Mickey Mouse dolls made those. That's an illustration from the storybook. There was a storybook, and I have a reprint of it here. This is the storybook, and a bad copy goes for thousands of dollars for the original, and now that reprint goes for $100 for the reprint. And the plot of the first, we have two plots here for what the film was going to be. In the first plot, there was a pilot named Gus, and he went on a mission, and he sees a gremlin drilling holes in his plane, and the plane crashes. And he tells the other pilots that he saw a gremlin drilling holes on his plane. And the other pilots are skeptical. And then the gremlin reveals himself. And because the pilot's name was Gus, the gremlin is known as Gremlin Gus. And that's the one with the mustache. Okay. And then a female gremlin shows up. And the other pilots see her. Sorry. And the pilots keep swapping stories about all these gremlins that they're seeing in the messing up the airplanes and everything. And they learn that the gremlins are sabotaging the planes because the airplanes are invading their home in the clouds.
Oh, I thought they were going to be Nazi collaborators or something.
Well, that's one of the reasons that it didn't work out, because the people had families dying in these airplane crashes. So how are you going to make the gremlins a sympathetic character when they're causing the airplane crashes?
Oh my goodness, that is a PR nightmare, isn't it?
But what they end up doing is they convince the gremlins that to help them defeat the Nazis, because they'd be worse under Nazi power. And so the climax of the movie is the gremlins go on a mission with the pilots, and they start downing the planes of the Nazis. Mm-hmm. And there's a scene where Hitler was furious the gremlins are getting credit for downing the planes and not him. And they had a scene where the pilot has to get a physical, and the gremlins help him pass the physical, but the doctor can't see the gremlins. And,
it sounds entertainment.
I think this could work out. They could do a period piece today if it wasn't woke. But what Walt liked about this is that these were like the Three Little Pigs or the Seven Dwarfs. It was a World War II fairy tale. And he wasn't getting to do anything like that because he was making all the war films. There's Roald Dahl and Walt with some of the gremlin puppets. And what Roald Dahl did is he wrote it's called a story Bible, where you write all the details of the world and the films and everything. And this is what some of the stuff about the gremlins were. The girl gremlins were called Fiffinellias. The boy gremlins were called Widgets. The little girl gremlins were called Flippery Gidgets. And the ice-breathing gremlins were called Spandules. They like to eat postage stamps, and only pilots can see them. So the film was going to open where they give you POV shot of flying in a cockpit.
Mm.
So then you can see the gremlins because you're a pilot now.
Oh, I see.
So
Yeah,
uh,
that's. I mean, I just like the look of the characters.
oh yeah, these characters were designed by an animator called Bill Justice, and he went on to be an Imagineer, and he programmed the animatronics, and he was drawing gremlins and all the councils and everything because they'd have stuff go wrong, and that's what gremlins are known for. And people didn't remember who the gremlins were, all the co-workers, and you have to tell them the story. And I guess they kept those councils because he drew all the gremlins on the councils.
Wow.
And so what happened with Roy during all this is because no one could trademark or copyright Gremlins. He went to. Now I got a story on this too. I'll
Okay.
stop and
Well,
tell this.
I'll hold there. Continue your story
okay.
on Roy.
Well, Roy went to the other animation studios because they were all making cartoons about Gremlins, and he asked them to not make any cartoons on Gremlins, and they all agreed except for Richard Fleischer, who was doing, Dave Fleischer, he was the brother of Max Fleischer. They had Fleischer Studios, and Disney ran them out of business. They were their first big competitor.
Oh,
so
wow.
Roy went over his head and got the head of Columbia Pictures to shut the movie down. Looney Tunes had two Gremlin shorts. They were too far ahead to cancel, so Leon Schlesinger agreed to just take the word Gremlin out of the title. And Cecil B. DeMille was going to make a movie with an animated sequence of Gremlins, and he agreed not to make the movie because of this. This was like all the studios working together for the war effort, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll find in my notes where I have that about the Lifesavers ad. But the Lifesavers were the only candy that were still made in full supply during World War II because they could give it to the soldiers overseas. They were in the ration packets.
Interesting.
And all the other candy companies refused to make, they all accepted cutting down production so they could make Lifesavers because they weren't chocolate, so they wouldn't melt. And the soldiers could carry them around with them as a thing from home, you know, memento from home. And this was done to keep the copyright going. And when Roald Dahl saw it, he was kind of angry about it.
Oh, wow.
He said that was cheapening who the Gremlins were.
Boy, they were everywhere, weren't they?
This was a manual that they gave out to train pilots, and they had those are the Spendule Gremlins.
I love how they these names for all the individual.
Well, that's another reason they didn't make it because they said it overcomplicated the story. But
I'm almost on board with that.
Roald Dahl, well, you know how he would make up names and everything in the children's books we know, and that he was doing that right from this was the very first story like that he wrote. And these Gremlins, they were on games and puzzles and plush toys. They were storybooks. They were in comics. They were on nearly 30 different military insignia, like we were showing the insignias last week. They were on those, and the girl Gremlin was the official mascot of the female flyers in the RF. There she is there. Perfect timing.
Hey, I got one right, y'all. What's her name? Fifinella?
Fifinella. That's what they called the girl Gremlins. He had a whole thing where gremlins are born in a nest in a litter, and there's only one girl for every 30 boys.
Wow! Oh no! Oh, that spells future trouble for her.
It did. So when they keep
it's like the Smurfs, man.
This was the precursor to the Smurfs, even though no one remembers it. It really was.
Yeah.
And then in the story for the film, they added a female human character named Joan, who would be a pilot in the women's auxiliary, and she didn't believe in the Gremlins, and the pilot had to convince her there were Gremlins. And the writer Eric Knight, who created Lassie Come Home, worked for Walt, and he suggested they make the movie live action with the animated Gremlins, and this would have predated Song of the South. This would have been the first movie like that. And Knight actually died in a plane crash on a mission in World War II in 1943. So that's an irony of that. Lassie wasn't popular until after he died.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
And Walt kept waffling between if it was going to be live action or animated, but they decided eventually to go animated because they couldn't shoot all of the plane battles that would be needed for the film. But they did do some tests of live action with the Gremlins crawling on plane wings and things like that. But no one knows where these tests are. They haven't been seen, but people say they existed. Wow, another version of the story, they were going to have the Gremlins defeat a Gremlin Hitler. There's an example from the comics.
Donald Duck does not look happy.
He
And then you got the guy sawing off his plant. What?
well, that's what Gremlins did. They weren't
troublemakers, man.
That's why they were hard to make sympathetic characters. But Walt believed there was still something here, so he did 2 scripts as a feature-length film.
Oh wow!
And I have the plot here summed up. In the main one, there was the final script. The Gremlins crash the plane. The pilot gets knocked down. They have the scene with Hitler angry. The Gremlins are getting credit and not him. Then there's the pilot is gonna, in this version, is called Rip Yorkie, and as he recuperates in the hospital, the Gremlin shows up. Rip convinces him that because they're creatures of imagination, Nazis hate imagination. The Gremlins should ally themselves with the pilots, and the pilots will leave them alone because they won't be fighting in the war. So the Gremlins agree. They go on the mission and they go over to Germany to do like the Battle of Britain in Berlin, and and they bomb Hitler. And in another version for the climax, Gremlin Gus is put on trial by the other Gremlins for fraternizing with humans, and the Nazis blow up the courtroom. And so then
on there, man.
Then the Nazis. Well, these are all different versions that they had come up with.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And Walt finally shut production down in 1944, and he considered doing a short cartoon. But what ultimately killed the Gremlins was because they were afraid by the time they got the film done, World War II would be over with, and the film would become dated. And but It's a Wonderful Life was filmed during it had been a modern day film when it was filmed, but we look back on it now like A Christmas Carol, where it's in the past. It's now a period film.
Wow, that's a good point there.
But now this was, well, I'll tell when Walt quit doing the Gremlins. I noticed this on my own this morning or yesterday. All the backstory stuff he did, the background. There was going to be an introduction at the beginning of the film that he had real gremlins in the film. He did this story about he caught the gremlins in a shoebox and brought them back to his studio. All this ended up is the backstory of Darby O'Gill and Little People, and Leprechauns before then. They were sinister figures. Walt was the first person that made them into sympathetic characters, and it's my theory of the background he went through on the Gremlins. It all ended up in that film, Darby O'Gill and Little People. That's a great film, by the way.
Okay.
But no one has ever, to my knowledge, connected the Gremlins with Darby O'Gill.
Interesting. Okay.
But that's another example of how these things never really go away. They just end up in other films, or they'll come back and visit it and do the film.
Oh, nice.
These are the comic books. They did a revival a few years ago, and they did a sequel story, but it was an environmentalist kind of a story. But it was a sequel. They weren't allowed to put World War II in the comics, so that's why they had to do a sequel.
Okay.
And that's what those are, and that's the collected edition.
I like that Gus guy.
Oh, that's my favorite Gremlin. He's in they did a Mickey Mouse video game, and he's in that. Recently, they did the video game, like within the last 20 years. These are statues of the Gremlins. I don't have any of this stuff. I wish I did, because now they're like $500.
Wow.
I mean, I'd like them just because of the history, not that they're $500.
Oh yeah, you said they eat postage stamps.
Yeah, that's the one I would love to have too.
Snack time.
Yeah. And
what would they do with the environmental stuff? Like, what would they the more modern story? What do you mean?
What they did was they lived in a forest, and the bank was going to tear the forest down, and they had to save the forest.
Oh, so they went after the bankers and stuff?
Yeah, the banker was the villain.
Awesome.
So I mean, now this is what happened with the story. Roald Dahl, he was writing a book in the 60s, and it was about a guy who made chocolate in a chocolate factory, Willy Wonka. And he thought back to his time working with Walt Disney, and he based Willy Wonka on Walt Disney. There's my Willy Wonka there. And when Grandpa Joe is telling the story to Charlie about this magical man who does all this stuff with chocolate, he's actually talking about Walt Disney. And that was the inspiration. Okay. And Roald Dahl wrote the script for Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. And the Sherman brothers who worked for Walt, they did the songs. And how this comes full circle, Roald Dahl asked them on the set one day if they would write the songs for Willy Wonka when it became a musical. But it didn't happen because they only had $1 million to make Willy Wonka, and they couldn't pay the Sherman Brothers song fee. So, but that would have been full circle. All of them had worked with Walt Disney at different periods. And Roald Dahl also is the only person who's ever worked with Jim Henson and Walt Disney. Jim Henson did a film version of The Witches in the 80s, and Roald Dahl hated it. But that was a bookend to his career. Now, this here, I put this in here for you. That's the Mickey Mouse gas mask that they had in World War II, so the kids wouldn't be afraid of the gas mask. But if you looked at the kids wearing that, you'd be afraid of them.
Sure would.
Those are worth a fortune now because they were made of rubber and they rot. Glenn needs one in his museum.
That is wow.
If you keep going, there's a picture of a kid wearing one.
Creepy.
Yeah.
No.
There's not very many of those in existence.
Yeah, I bet. Wow.
I think those are great.
Creepy, but great. Yeah. Okay.
Now I'll finish up here with the Gremlins. What I think with the Gremlins, they could do a movie like they did the Chronicles of Narnia. It was set in World War II. You could do a movie like that and do a period piece with the Gremlins, or you could do a movie like Saving Mr. Banks about the making of the Gremlins, because you have Roald Dahl with Walt Disney and all the things that happened behind the scenes with that. And they kept notes because he had a stenographer writing all of the notes. And Roald Dahl was kind of a wild character, a womanizer kind of thing. You'd have some interesting stories with that he did in Hollywood.
All righty. So
now, while you're doing opening the next folder, I'll tell you about a few
World
War II shorts they didn't make. There was one called Democracy. It was going to be about a family called the Joneses, whose ancestors were always oppressed through history. They escaped Nazi Germany, legally immigrate to America, and they go through the phone book calling all the other people with the last name Jones, and they tell them about what all the amendments of the Constitution means. But this was called Democracy. And then there was another one called The Melting Pot, and it was all about the Nazis and eugenics, and it was how America's a melting pot. And another one they didn't make. And the third one I have is there was a World War II short that they didn't make called Square World. There was going to be a satire of the rigid conformity of totalitarianism. And it's the experts reimagining the world where they want everything curved to be square. And this is kind of like today we're living in real life. And that story appeared in a 1944 children's book called Walt Disney Surprise Package.
All right.
But that would have been all three would have been very timely for today. Now this is the second most developed film that Walt worked on that didn't get made. It's called Chanticleer and Renard. And
this actually makes me sad because somewhere I am missing my Coastal Carolina Chanticleer T-shirt. So just thought I'd throw that in there as an aside. I don't know where it got off to. Anyway, continue, please.
Oh, yeah. The Chanticleer was based on a musical from the 1910 about a rooster who thinks his crowing makes the sun rise. And that was the first part of this. Renard comes from an 11th century set of poems. It was the first time a fox was a trickster in Western culture and stories. And Walt got the idea of putting the two into one story and make Renard the villain. And it was sort of like Animal Farm before there was an Animal Farm. And
there he is.
The plot of the story is Chanticleer is the prideful rooster who he's the mayor of this community. He's a solid, hardworking citizen, keeps everyone on the straight and narrow path. He's crowing and making them all wake up there. And then Renard is the sly fox manipulator who plays on people's bad traits. And Renard moves into this barnyard village, and he decides to challenge Chanticleer to a mare race. And he gets the community to embrace being lazy and focusing on the wrong kind of things. Like here's Chanticleer's telling him to keep up egg production. So what Renard does is make Chanticleer look like he's kind of a jerk because he's sticking to the what we have to do and all this. And Renard's all about having a good time. So he ends up having another rooster come in, and he challenges Chanticleer to a duel. And Chanticleer loses the duel. He's made to look foolish, and Renard takes over the community with his creatures of the night, like bats and moles and things like that. And the community goes to get Chanticleer to come back and challenge Renard, and the Renard gets chased out of the community. And even though Chanticleer doesn't make the sun rise, he makes the community rise. That was kind of the end of the story. Now, the film was shelved originally because of World War II. And then after World War II, it was reworked again. In the late 1950s, Mark Davis, who did a lot of these designs, he was also the animator of Maleficent, Sleeping Beauty. He did a ton of the characters I'm drawing a blank on, but we're going to talk about him next week. But he also went into the Imagineering after this. He did Pirates of the Caribbean, Haunted Mansion. He created all the scenes, like story sketches like this. All the scenes in the ride, that was Mark Davis.
Oh, wow. Yeah, okay.
So Mark Davis begins working on this Chanticleer and Renard with Ken Andersen. We'll talk about him a little later. And they do this treatment. They do all the story sketches. They have songs written by the guy that did the songs for that Scrooge McDuck and Money that we talked about a few weeks ago. And Walt had a lot of enthusiasm for this project because it avoided what plagued Sleeping Beauty. Sleeping Beauty took 9 years to make because of how it looked. It was a really wide screen. They never made a film like that. And all the characters are very rigid and stylized. And this went back to their roots of doing animated characters, kind of dressed like people, behaving like people and everything. And what was going on was this was going to follow 101 Dalmatians. And Roy wanted to shut this animation studio down. And Walt wouldn't do it because he said he owed it to all these animators and artists that they need to have a job because he brought them in and started all this with them. And you remember the strike and everything. He really cared about his employees. These employees weren't the strikers, by the way. They were loyal to Walt through the whole thing. And what Roy and Walt agreed to is they would have a competition between two films. And one of them was Chanticleer and Renard, and the other was The Sword and the Stone. And after that, Walt would agree to scale back production. And they have the competition, and all of Walt's guys and Roy's guys are there around the room to see the projects. And at the end of the presentation, someone in the back of the room says, "You can't make a personality out of a chicken," and that's what shut the whole thing down. And Walt put Mark Davis in Imagineering after that to protect him from the studio because he had more control in Imagineering because that was Walt's own company. The Disney studio was a public traded company. And Walt was just like a figurehead that ran the studio. So he protected him after that. A lot of these character designs were jumping off points for the designs that went into the Robin Hood film. If you remember Robin Hood. Then they had a rooster character in that. He narrates the film.
I thought he looked familiar.
Yeah, well, it was the same. It was Ken Andersen based it off of this.
Okay.
And Robin Hood was going to be set in the rural South originally because Ken Andersen was always into that stuff. And they moved it to being a traditional English story. And the Roy's banking people, they wanted to shut the studio down after Walt died with the Jungle Book. And Roy refused to do it because of this confrontation he had with Walt over Chanticleer and Renard and Sword and the Stone. So Roy Sr. protected animation after his brother died. And it was his son, Roy Jr., that saved animation when Eisner took over. So it kind of goes back to the Chanticleer story. And in the late 70s, they tried to revive it again. It went nowhere. But Don Bluth was aware of this. And when he went off on his own, he made the film Rockadoodle. And it's based on the Chanticleer story, but it's loosely based on it. And it didn't do well. So Disney's never done anything with the Chanticleer stuff, even though all the artists that worked there in the 90s, they all loved this artwork, and they said it needs to be animated. And when Rockadoodle came out, Disney put some of that artwork in this book. That's a storybook that's based on the outline I just shared, but it's not the only place where those characters appeared in Disney Art of and history books. That was from the 70s revival. They changed the designs there. That's the book. I don't know what they go for now, but if you're interested in it, that's a book that's worth having. They've done a lot of these books, or a lot of these films that weren't made, they made into storybooks like that with the artwork. So they had a life after that.
That's good stuff, dude. I'm pretty sure I've seen a children's play with that story.
You probably have. I would like to here are the songs. I have this is a song book that's got songs from films that they didn't make, and it has some of the Chanticleer songs in it. But I don't read music, so I don't know what it sounds like.
I gotcha. Before we get to chapter 5 here, I meant to ask you this before we started.
Oh, yeah.
Inside there, I see multiple files. Did you want me to start with the fir tree file or just the
Well,
ones
just start with the
that are
ones that
loose?
show the loose ones, because that's the
Okay,
main one, and then the folders are the animated shorts that we're going to be within it. And when
gotcha.
we get to those folders, just pick whatever you think looks good, because I don't have a lot to say about them. Now, this is
Okay.
Hans Christian Andersen. Walt was going to make a live action movie in the 1930s about the life of Hans Christian Andersen. And MGM was also going to do that. And Walt met with the head of MGM, Samuel Goldwyn, and they talked about doing a joint production on this. And you can just skip on through these because these are
Okay.
drawings of what the film would have looked like.
Let's
And
see here.
that's another
Well, that's
picture of
kinda
Hans
cool.
Christian Andersen. These are some of the concept art pieces.
Okay.
And they were going to tell the story of Hans Christian Andersen's life in live action. And the fairy tales would have been animated by the Disney studios. And when they showed Goldwyn all this stuff, he was blown away, and he agreed right on the spot to do the production. And the people that Goldwyn collaborated with, they said that this was the best film they ever seen. That's Samuel Goldwyn right there. I found a picture of him for this. And Samuel Goldwyn eventually made this movie without Walt in the 50s, and that's the poster from that. And I'm going to link to it in the links because it's on Tubi, and it's Hans Christian Andersen with Danny Kaye. But the origin of this was this Walt Disney movie that never got made. And in that movie, the fairy tales were done as songs instead of animated sequences. And what Walt's employees said is Walt lost interest, and he just let Goldwyn get away with the idea.
Boy, a lot of art here. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So now I'm gonna go back
These
to
are
fir
just
tree.
examples. Yeah, these are just examples of the what sequences might have looked like. There's a little fir tree. There's only one picture in there. I should have just called it.
Sorry. Yeah.
Oh, it's okay.
Stand by. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. You know, most of Hans Christian Andersen's stories have a Christian moral to them. That's why they have sad endings. Like, well, the little fir tree was about he loses his leaves and everything, and at the end of the story, he becomes a Christmas tree, and then he gets tossed out in the trash, and that was supposed to be the moral, not to be vain of the things of this world.
All right. Okay.
Now the woke are rewriting Hans Christian Andersen. They try to make him out to be gay. Now this is the Little Mermaid, and some of these storyboards were used in the final film that they did make in '89.
Okay.
Just whatever you like there, you can show. Mm-hmm. It was more of a moody story, and in the original version of Little Mermaid, she gives up her voice to be with the prince, and at the end of the story, the witch says she can't return to the sea unless she kills the prince. And so, or she'll turn into sea foam. That was the penalty after the 3 days. The witch wasn't really the villain. So she decides she's not going to kill the prince, and she turns into, and she dies and becomes sea foam, but she's rescued by the daughters of the air like an angel and goes up into heaven. And that's another Christian moral about human sacrifice. You know, sacrifice your life for someone else, and then you go on to eternal life. But you can recognize some of these shots were in the Disney movie with Ariel and everything.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
But this was the springboard for this. The artist that did this was Kai Nielsen. He did a lot of the film production art, like for Snow White, Fantasia, and Pinocchio, and it has that kind of a dark look to it.
Huh.
But
boy, it sure does look a lot darker than you would anticipate with this story. Yeah.
Well, that's what the original story was. When The Little Mermaid came out, I went to the library and got a book of Hans Christian Andersen stories, and that I was surprised how sad the story was.
Wow, yeah.
I was 9 years old when that one came out. And the woke now, they try to make it out that this story is about Hans Christian Andersen being a homosexual, even though there's no proof that he was. Mm-hmm. And the whole concept of having legs is so he would have been compatible with another man. But the person they say was his boyfriend was married to someone else.
Okay.
Well, people, the experts now, they go back into history and they try to make all these people into being part of the Rainbow Jihad when they may not have been.
Right.
I mean, I made a post on Twitter on someone's page, one of my friends' pages this summer, about I'd read a book about Washington Irving, and the author said he was gay, and I never mentioned the author, didn't mention the title, and the author found me because he has a notification when you mention Washington Irving that he gets alerted. And he's
Oh, wow.
and he must be the only. There's probably hundreds of books on Washington Irving. He's the only one that says Washington Irving was gay, so he knew I was talking about it. His book, and
Mhm.
he's there arguing. Then he plays the card. Why is this even a issue in 2023? Well, he brought it up, and my point is, you can't say something like that unless there's evidence that it's true. And if there's no evidence, you shouldn't be saying things like that unless you can back it up. It's not speculation. It shouldn't be part of history. It should just be fact. It's fact. Speculation shouldn't be fact. Now,
What are we looking at here?
this is the Steadfast Tin Soldier, and that's the Jack in the Box in that story.
Okay.
And these storyboards were used when they animated it for Fantasia 2000. They went back into the vault and they pulled these out and they used these as a springboard.
Whoa.
And in that story, he ends up sacrificing himself for the paper ballerina she loves, and she throws herself in the fire, and they burn together and die.
What in the world, man?
And all that's left behind is her heart and the tin melted around it, and that's the end of the story. And they didn't put that in the Fantasia 2000. They gave it a happy ending.
That's a little rough. Wow. What do we got here? What is this guy doing?
He's swallowed by a fish.
I've heard that story before.
That's in Fantasia. Yeah, well, Jonah there, or Pinocchio.
Yeah.
But it's interesting when you go back to look at Fantasia 2000, how a lot of these shots are in that. They put them right in that because of the history. And Roy Jr. would have known about it because he was there. You know, he'd been a little boy when they were working on this stuff.
Wow.
He always told a story about how when he was sick one winter, his Uncle Walt told him the story of Pinocchio at his bedside. And when he saw the actual film a few years later, he was disappointed because the way Walt told it was more entertaining than what the actual film ended up being.
Okay. Let's see what else is happening here. Yeah, one thing I've noticed. Oh gosh, one thing I've noticed is a lot of dark colors during this.
Well, it was done during World War II and the Great Depression, so people were kind of not very.
Were they in a bad mood?
I would say so.
Okay.
Did you ever go look at those movies that were from the 30s, the Laurel and Hardys and all that?
Yeah, I need to do that. Yeah. Okay, let's see. Where are we going here? I gotta go back. So what was that? That was folder 3 inside of folder whatever that was. Okay. Emperor's New Clothes. Is that where we're going next?
Yeah, go ahead. And then that one, I have more to say on that one.
Okay, fire away.
Okay. Now this one, Walt tried, after they did the Hans Christian Andersen development, he tried to make it as a standalone featurette or animated feature. And what he ran into with this one for the problem is there were no sympathetic characters in the story because the two swindlers swindle the king, and the king is kind of pompous and arrogant. And who do you root for in that? And I think these storyboards are great for this one.
Yeah, that's good stuff right there. Yeah.
They tried different versions. They even tried a Mickey, Donald, and Goofy version, and that didn't work out either. And one of the things I'm going to link to in our links is Rankin Bass did a version of The Emperor's New Clothes in the 70s with Danny Kaye as the narrator, and they were able to make the king a sympathetic character.
Oh, interesting.
And it was made around the time of when they did Peter Cottontail and Santa Claus is Coming to Town, so it has that look. And it's one of the best things they ever did, but nobody's ever really seen it. It was on DVD for a time, and it went out of print, but it's on YouTube. I think that's probably the Empress.
I mean, there are so many things that really got far along in the process that just never came to fruition. That's wild, man.
But every film at Disney, this is how they're made, even to this day. And this is from the Danny Kaye Emperor's New Clothes from Rankin Bass.
Okay.
They used the same puppet from Peter Cottontail, and that's the Emperor.
Wow.
And what they for that one, what they did was the villain was the court jester.
Wow.
And because it was written by the guy that did all the Christmas specials. So
yeah, I was just about to say it looks like
yeah,
the same set as Rudolph.
Yeah. He had all that writer Romeo Muller had a way of making things for adults and children where it wasn't smutty, but you would get puns and things. In that one, the advisors were the prime minister, the primer minister, and the primest minister. And I just love stuff like that.
Okay. All right.
Is the Emperor's Nightingale the next one? Next number there? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have stuff to say on this one when you get in there.
All right, fire away.
Walt had tried to develop this one since the 1930s, outside of the Hans Christian Andersen film. In the 1960s, they tried to develop it as a stop motion film, and because at the time the studio was getting into stop motion, and they did it like paper cutouts. And these are what these story art pieces are from. They were going to be paper cutouts, and they look like real people.
Mm-hmm.
And they did tests, and someone stole the test. They don't know what happened to the test.
Oh no!
And then in the 70s, they did another version with Mickey Mouse. John Lasseter developed. And they didn't do it because they did Mickey's Christmas Carol instead. And that one was released as a book in the 90s as well, but I didn't grab it from the shelf. But it has the John Lasseter version.
Okay. Let's see. Where are we going here?
I think Penelope in the 12 Months is next.
I've got Snow Queen. No.
Well, you can show that if you want. There's only two pieces of art in there. This was before.
I mean, you went through the trouble of this stuff, you know.
It's okay. So. That was when they ended up doing Frozen, but the Snow Queen was in development at Disney for years, and this is from the Snow Queen version, where in the Snow Queen, the girl saves her friend that's a slave of the queen.
Okay.
And Mark Davis designed that queen you just showed with like the candles on her head.
Well, that a lot of this looks familiar, like Frozen, like you said.
I mean, she's even got the braid of hair there, and they claimed they had not seen that artwork when they designed Frozen, but that's interesting.
That is wow. Okay, so Penelope time. Let's see here. Okay, let's see how many is this.
You can just show whatever you want. You have to show them all.
Some of those but man, if you're taking the time to do all this stuff, I don't want to.
Well, I know we only have 2 hours, and
all right, fire away, man.
Okay, this is called Penelope in 12 Months. It was developed by Joe Grant, who we've talked about before, and his writing partner Dick Humer, and it was about a little girl who travels through time through a magical grandfather clock, and on her trip through all this, she meets personifications of the 12 months, Mother Nature, and a leprechaun. And then it was shelved because of World War II. Then after World War II, it was revived by Mary Blair, who we'll talk about next week. And she developed it into a Prince and the Pauper kind of story about a spoiled princess and this peasant girl that look alike. And they switch places and they have this adventure. And in the story, the spoiled princess won't let New Year's Eve come unless she gets a bouquet of flowers in the dead of winter. So the Penelope goes looking for these flowers and has this adventure.
Kroger.
Yeah.
Walmart.
Pretty much. These days. And it'll just keep counting on, just like it'll be December 32nd, 33rd, 34th, because it'll just keep going on forever. And she has a magical ring that she goes on her journey with, and it takes her to all these different places. And a lot of people say this was the best work Mary Blair ever did, but the film never come together. And what Joe Grant said that at the time that post World War II, they were focusing more to an adult audience, and because the main character is a child, he felt that was why Walt shut this one down.
Okay.
But I wish they'd put this one out as a storybook so I knew what the story would have been. But there were a lot of films back then. Shirley Temple did one called The Bluebird where she traveled through places like this. And that one was weird because she ends up in heaven and sees all the kids before they're born, but they're like teenagers and stuff. And one of them was Abraham Lincoln. He was in love with this other girl, and one was going to be born, and he had to stay behind. It is a very bizarre. I'm sure it's on Tubi. I don't know, but it probably is. It's called The Bluebird. It was Shirley Temple, and now she did that because she didn't do The Wizard of Oz. It was that kind of a story. Well, you're finishing up there. I'll show one I don't have. I'll talk about one I don't have pictures for.
Okay.
In the late 1940s, Walt was going to do a movie of Washington Irving stories, and it was going to have The Legend of Sleepy Hollow and Rip Van Winkle. And because they had to package everything in those package features, he took The Legend of Sleepy Hollow and put it with The Wind in the Willows and made it Ichabod Mr. Toad. And in our links, we'll have the link to this.
Okay,
Rip Van Winkle came out as a children's album, and he cast Walter Houston as Rip Van Winkle. He would have been perfect as Rip Van Winkle. You'll hear him in the LP we're linking to. And Arthur Q. Bryan, who was Elmer Fudd, he was the dwarves in this.
Okay.
And but that's another way these canceled projects lived on. They'd be children's albums with a storybook you'd read. This is Don Quixote. And this one, now, I've also heard that this is a caricature of Walt. And they also tried to use this in Alice in Wonderland when they're going to have the White Knight in Alice in Wonderland. So I don't know if this is credited as being Don Quixote, but I think it might be the White Knight in Alice in Wonderland. And Don Quixote, they try to adapt it to with the core things in the story. They have the burning of the chivalry books by his niece. He had a visit with a duchess. He went on various adventures. He saw the windmills and thought they were giants and tried to knock them down. He encountered a puppet theater, and the story ended with his death. And that's what the book ended with.
I know.
And you know what's interesting is George Washington, the day he left office, he got a copy of Don Quixote. I think Glenn Beck has that actually in his museum. And they kept coming back to this film and shelving it because they couldn't find a way to make a crazy guy a sympathetic character.
I'm trying to think that's exactly what I'm thinking. I'm thinking,
how do you make a lunatic a sympathetic character?
What do you do here?
So they reworked it again around the time of Sleeping Beauty, and they shelved that. And then in the 90s, they tried to rework it again with the Paris studio. Now, and Don Quixote did end up in a Disney film. It was called Scandalous John. And it's a strange movie because
doesn't sound like a Disney flick. Well, maybe now it does, but 30 years ago.
Well, yeah, you wouldn't think, well, this is Don Quixote, but it is. It's a Western with Brian Keith, and he's a lunatic. And it's painful to watch an old man with dementia through this movie thinking he's doing all these adventures, and he ends up dying at the end of the movie. He gets into a train accident. There's the poster for it, Scandalous John. And what's ironic about that is Bill Walsh, who did a lot of the films for Walt Disney, wrote them and created them and everything. He was the behind-the-scenes guy. He said this was his favorite project they ever made at Disney.
Oh, wow.
But
my goodness.
At the end of the movie, the character that is his sidekick, the little Mexican guy, he sees the ghost of Scandalous John, and they go riding off into the sunset. So you wonder if he got dementia too or what.
Oh, no. All right, let's see where we at here.
Next one's Hiawatha.
Hiawatha, yes, sir. Another, and just so that to kind of reset everything, the title of this episode 6 of 12 this week, we're talking about the Disney that never was. So these were things that I guess got to various levels of production, and then were abandoned. All right, so fire away, sir.
Well, Hiawatha, he started this in 1937. He did a short called Little Hiawatha. And then he was going to do a companion piece about Minnehaha. And these were based on poems written by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. He's an ancestor of mine, by the way.
Oh, wow, how cool.
He did poems about American history, like The Midnight Ride of Paul Revere, Courtship of Miles Standish. And he also did the poem that became the song, I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day. And Walt got the idea he was going to make a movie on this, like a serious movie. And that's what these pictures are from there. The original movie idea got shelved because of World War II, and then he came back to it, but he wanted to make it a very serious tone movie. And the plot was going to be told in flashback, where a white Christian missionary arrives on the shores of the United States, and the Indians tell him the story of Hiawatha. And during a tribal war, the Great Spirit sends a Indian prophet, and it's Hiawatha, and he makes peace between the tribes because they're warring over food. And the Great Spirit leads Hiawatha to a valley where he discovers corn. And he feeds all the tribes so they all go in peace, And he falls in love with a maid from another tribe, Minnehaha. And after they have peace, there's a villain called, I'm going to say this wrong.
Spell it. We'll get you.
Te-do-do-ho.
Nailed it.
I hope. He's jealous of Hiawatha's status. He belittles Hiawatha's works, and they have a duel. And Hiawatha, the Great Spirit intervenes, and Hiawatha kills the villain. And then there's a blizzard, and the Great Spirit rescues Hiawatha. And an alternate version of the ending, and for the third act, the villain's name is Pearlfeather. He sends a plague to wipe out all the tribes. Hiawatha gets the plague. He heads out to the swamp to confront Pearlfeather in his lair, and it's guarded by a fiery serpent. Hiawatha defeats the serpent with his archery skills. He has a battle with Pearlfeather. A woodpecker reveals Pearlfeather's weakness. Hiawatha defeats Pearlfeather. The plague goes away. Hiawatha returns home, and he's a hero. And that's where that was the final version. That's what it would have been. And in 1948, Walt showed this to his staff. And the feedback from the staff was they thought the story was too serious for the general public because they wanted more lighthearted things. And they always reminded Walt about how Fantasia was rejected by the public because it was such a serious film. And so that always haunted a lot of these projects, why they didn't get made, like Don Quixote.
I was just about to say that I'm kind of sensing that theme here, that ultimately it seems like the death knell for most of these projects, even the Gremlins, is that there's just too serious of an element there for even that one, as cute as they are, and as appealing
Fantasia
as
failed.
Right.
Originally, Bambi and Pinocchio failed because they didn't make money. They didn't make money till they were re-released years later.
I see. Yeah, so but I mean, even with the Gremlins, you could have the most adorable creatures if the end result is the death of hero pilots from World War II. That's not the best. It's not an easy PR road to hoe there. Okay.
Well, we'll get onto that one. I'm almost done here.
Oh, okay.
That's okay. With Walt saw Hiawatha, the poem, he saw him as almost like a Christ-like figure. And with Hiawatha, they left that in the morgue for decades. The animators didn't want to animate it because it was all so realistic. And it's hard to animate realistic humans. And when they made Pocahontas, they went in and found the Hiawatha storyboards, and some of the look of Pocahontas is from Hiawatha, those storyboards. That's the end of the Hiawatha story.
Hiawatha, okay.
Well, this is the Rainbow Road to Oz. And if you don't know, the Wizard of Oz books were the first and the most successful fantasy storybook series in the history of publishing. And we could do a whole show about them sometime.
I bet we could, man.
I have them all. There's like over 50 books. There were silent films. They had competing comic strips. There were Broadway shows. And Walt wanted to do the Wizard of Oz books way back in the 30s. He finally obtained the rights to 12 of the 15 books that L. Frank Baum wrote in the 1950s. But because Alice and Peter Pan weren't successful, he didn't make this as an animated film. And one of the concepts for this is he was going to have the Musketeers play the characters in a live action film. And we're going to link to this. This is a clip from his show. It aired on September 11th, 1957, that he had the Musketeers perform some of the songs. And it was a preview of the movie that never was. And what they ended up doing is they made the movie Babes in Toyland instead.
Okay.
But it would have looked very similar to this. And all these are different storyboards from the film. And that book I have of the songs that weren't used in the films, it has some songs from the Rainbow Road to Oz. And Oz and Babes in Toyland.
Brush off rainbow dust.
I think that's a hilarious gag.
That is cool, yeah.
Oz and Babes in Toyland were always intertwined because Babes in Toyland was created to compete with the Broadway show of The Wizard of Oz. And people don't realize that. And even after he didn't make the film of the Musketeers, they tried to put it in the Oz characters in Disneyland, different attractions. That didn't happen. And what they ended up doing eventually was they did 4 different read-along storybooks based on some of the Wizard of Oz books, and in one of them, it was based on the Oz book, The Scarecrow of Oz. He had Ray Bolger play the Scarecrow, and because Ray Bolger, he was the villain in Babes in Toyland, but he was also the Scarecrow in the MGM film. It was probably the only time he ever reprised that character. It was in this Disney album. And we have links to all of the Disney albums of the Wizard of Oz. We have links to them in our links on this video. And some of the songs from Rainbow Road to Oz are in that. And the final thing that happened with the Wizard of Oz in the Disney copyrights there, they greenlit that film Return to Oz in the 80s. And that's why, because they owned all the rights to these books, and they never made a film. So Ron Miller greenlit it. Now, in that photo there, that's the actor that played Zorro with the actor that played. Well, that was the one.
Which one? Oh, this one. This. Okay.
See, that's at the end of this show we're going to have linked to. But this publicity photo, it must have gone out for that season of the Walt's show. Walt's in the middle, and on the right is Zorro.
I see.
On the left is Andy Burnett that we talked about last week. The actors, anyway.
Yeah.
But that would have been to advertise. Those pictures there would have been a part of a ride at Disneyland that they didn't build. That's the witch, and the Cowardly Lion.
Yep. Hang on, I got timeout for a dog that is begging for attention here, so I gotta get her squared away. All right, there we are. Okay.
That's in Disneyland, Euro Disneyland on that storybook ride. They have the Wizard of Oz characters there.
Okay, this is awkward. She's gonna make all this noise in the microphone. Okay, what else we got here? Oh, wow. Okay,
those are the albums that we're linked to.
Okay.
But see, today they don't make kiddie albums anymore. So.
Oh yeah, I mean that was a staple of my youth in the '80s, man.
Mine too.
Yeah.
But that was the way that these canceled projects lived on. They would be kiddie records.
Yeah, absolutely. I know exactly what you're talking about. I mean, they were everywhere kids were, whether it was at school or at a nursery school or after school program or anything like that. I mean, that's
something the kids today they can't identify with. Yeah. Now that's a Return to Oz there.
You got electronics today. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see.
But a lot of people are posting those kiddie albums on YouTube so you can go back and relive them,
That's cool.
Or discover them.
Yeah. Let's see. Catfish bin time?
Yep. That's what we can go to.
Oh, we're getting in the studio here. All right. All right, fire away.
Catfish Bend was a project that was started in 1973. That's Ken Andersen who did this. He did the Chanticleer and Renard art, some of it. And he worked on Song of the South, and he really loved that. He was from the South. He loved that Southern setting, and that's why he wanted to do Robin Hood set in the South.
Is that Figment there next to him? Or
No, that's Pete's Dragon.
Yes. Thank you.
That was the last character he designed for Disney as a personal favor to Ron Miller. Then he retired. These characters from Catfish Bend, they end up in other anime. They end up in The Rescuers, some of them.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Now, the main characters he had was Doc Raccoon, who was the country squire, and he was the leader of the animals. There was Judge Black, a snake, and who was of unimpeachable integrity. And Gray Fox was the villain. He was a con man and a riverboat gambler. And these are based on a series of books. And they invited the author of the books to the studio in the late 70s to look at this stuff. And he was really pleased. And they never really got the plot down what this was going to be. But this would have been the film that came out in 1988 if Ron Miller had been in control then still. If the Eisner hadn't happened. Right. So Ron Miller greenlit it, but they didn't have the story. Several plots were developed with the characters. In one version, there was a human girl that discovers the animals in the forest playing like a band thing. That's that picture you have there. That's at Splash Mountain. When it was there, see, Catfish Bend was one. It had on the road sign. And another version of the story they were going to do, and that character, he ended up in The Rescuers, by the way, the owl priest. And so did that bunny. There was going to be a lost girl. It was a daughter of a wealthy plantation owner, and she washed out to sea and the animals save her. And there was another version where they were going to have the Catfish Bend characters in the feature with Mickey Mouse. There they are in The Rescuers. You can see in that image you showed just before that, it's the same characters. But that's and see the what there's the turtle there. He's wearing a Confederate hat.
Oh, wait, let me. Oh, yeah, I see that. Yeah, okay.
In the previous one, he's a toad or a frog. But see, that was because Ken Andersen grew up in the South.
Yeah.
Don't tell Disney that's there. They might cut it out of the movie. Now, in the Rescuers, originally, the villain was going to be Cruella de Vil. She was going to come back. And that's what all this artwork here is for. I put it in there just because it was kind of part of the Catfish Ben story.
Mm-hmm.
And they decided not to use her because Mark Davis did such a great job of her in 101 Dalmatians, they didn't want to repeat it because he wasn't in animation anymore. In the original version of the Rescuers, they were going to rescue a poet instead of a little girl. And in that version, the villain was an emperor penguin. And I have a picture of him coming up.
Oh, okay.
There was a third version where they had Louis Prima as King Louis, he lived in the zoo. Now this is great because the guy on the left, he was the publicist for Disney, John Culhane, and they put him in the movie as her sidekick villain, and he didn't realize they were doing it. And he posted that after the movie. It looks just like him.
Yes, I know. I remember this guy. Yeah.
But see, I put this in here so you and this was the other project that
Gummy bears, huh?
Ken Andersen designed the gummy bears, but you see, there's a couple there that didn't end up in the series.
Mm-hmm.
Dummy Gummy and the chef. He came out of retirement to do that.
Dummy Gummy. All right, very good. Let's see. My Peoples, is that right?
Yeah. This one was won in the Eisner years.
Okay. Get that up here. Fire away.
In My Peoples, that started in the late 90s, and it was developed by a director named Barry Cook. And it was a Romeo and Juliet story meets the Hatfields and the McCoys. And it was set in the Ozark Mountains. It was going to be a CGI hybrid with hand-drawn animation. The human characters were going to be hand-drawn, and the little puppets he makes, they were going to be CGI. And they were the sidekick characters. And they were going to do this because that's some of the human characters. Disney was going to lose Pixar, so they were going to go into CGI, and they were going to use this film to train the animators to work in CGI. And this was going to be made in Florida, and it was inspired by Frank Capra kind of films, and it would have come out in 2024 or 2025. And the core idea was main character, the guy, his name was Elgin. He was going to win over this girl he loved named Rose with making these dolls, folk art dolls. That's part of what they do in in that region of the country in the Appalachian Mountains. They make folk art dolls out of junk.
Mm-hmm.
Now the executives kept going in and changing things, and they took that simple idea and they added supernatural elements where instead of the dolls just being alive, they're demon possessed by the dead ghosts of his family and Abraham Lincoln.
I saw that. These guys back here?
Yeah, that's supposed to be really Abraham Lincoln, I guess.
Yeah, they look possessed, though. Yeesh.
James Carville was the voice of one of them. They brought James Carville.
I rest my case.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They changed the title to Angel and Her No Good Sister, and then to A Few Good Ghosts.
I see.
Is
this here? Is this part of it, or?
Well, that would have been the human characters. That's Elgin and Rose.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's what they actually would have looked like. That was the art. And now that's Angel, and she would have been voiced by Dolly Parton, and Dolly Parton wrote songs for this thing.
Oh wow! Can you hear those songs anywhere?
We linked to one of them. There's only one that's out there. This film was 70% completed when they canceled it.
Wow!
This is the plot of the story that they were the star-crossed lovers. Old Man McGee is the dad, and he. Now see, this is what they would have looked like as the ghost form. That would have been Angel.
Okay.
And then I show what she looked like as Angel.
This feels like a complicated plot, Ed.
Well, Joe Grant said when they canceled it, too many peoples.
That's why it's okay. See?
Yeah. Well, they took this simple idea and they made it all this overcomplicated thing.
Uh-huh.
And the story is Old Man McGee, he casts a spell to break up the romance, and that's what puts all these ghosts into the little dolls. And the Angel doesn't want to be involved to in this love story. She runs away, and then the other figures try to bring her back because they want to break the spell and go rest in peace. So
wow.
there's a traveling salesman character that Old Man McGee gets his daughter involved in, and the puppets try to break up a date and a drive-in with him. And there was going to be a scene where they deny it now, where the Lincoln character frees the chickens. They deemed it's racist.
Okay.
Now the voices in this, Dolly Parton was Angel. So the old lady character that was going to be voiced by Lily Tomlin. Paul Holbrook was the voice of Lincoln because he was known for being Sandberg's Lincoln, so it made sense they would cast him. Lou Rawls was one of these characters, and there's a character that's called Crazy Ray you haven't shown yet, but that he looks like a little devil guy, and that was the one James Carville was going to voice.
Wait a minute.
He did voice him. He's somewhere around where you're at.
Okay.
He has like little horns.
Again, perfect. James Carville, and what was the character's name?
Crazy Ray. That's James Carville right there.
That is awesome.
And he wasn't an actor. They just wanted his voice. There he is again.
Yeah.
And I like how he's chained to an 8-ball.
I gotta at least see some scenes from this thing.
Well, I've linked to some. They're
okay. Good. That'll be in the description.
This guy riding a lawnmower.
So check the description for the Dolly Parton song and for clips to this movie that was 70% done before they shelved it.
They shut it down because Eisner shut down the Florida hand-drawn studio after Brother Bear. And the executives claimed that people wanted to go see CGI films, not hand-drawn films. But many of the artists say that this film would have been, if they'd figured out how to make it less complicated, it would have been a great little film.
Boy, they got a lot done on this.
This is just what's been released. Now that's how he sold the film. He made an actual puppet of that angel character.
Boy.
Now that's shot where they're in the theater. That was a little trailer they made, and that's in our links too.
I was just about to say, how did this stuff leak out?
Well, some of it's in books, and some of it is on blogs of the artists who made it. They have like the portfolios.
I mean, that's got to be very demoralizing if you're an artist or even an actor, really, to commit so much time and energy and then not see your work come to fruition and released. I don't know. That's got to be rough as a creative type.
That's why I work alone on my own things now.
Yeah. Go ahead and remind everyone your own character that I know you're developing.
I have the Jill Chill character, but the other project I've been working on for a long time, I've been working on a comic book mini-series about American folklore, history, and satire called Folked Up America, like folklore. I have all the tall tale characters in this thing.
Wow.
And I've been the thing that's made it take so long is I'm an army of one. Plus, I'm doing all the historical research on it.
Sure.
I mean, I put several years into this. It's not the only thing I do full time. I have to do day jobs and other things.
Yeah, I gotcha.
But,
all right. So are we in the time folder now?
Yeah. Yep. Now you can go to the time folder.
Okay. All right. Let's see here. Fire away, sir.
Well, which one are you going to start with? I don't remember what number.
Inspector Bones.
Now, Inspector Bones was a film that was going to be done when Walt was alive in the 1940s, and this film became the Shaggy Dog in the 60s.
Okay.
57, 59, somewhere in there. I think it was 59. And Inspector Bones was like a Sherlock Holmes, but it was a dog. And that's all I really have to say about it, because
that's all you got to say.
Nobody had a plot about it or anything. Joe Grant loved that story, and he tried to bring it back in the 90s, but they wouldn't. They said it was a dumb idea. They wouldn't do stories like, well, in the 90s, they would only do these big event stories. Like they'd said they would never do a film like Lady and the Tramp, and Joe Grant was behind that story. And he would get into arguments with the executives about doing a film like that again.
On the Trail.
That one's called On the Trail, and that one would have come out in 1946. And this one, just look at all the American Indian artwork that is in this. It was going to be all about American Indian culture in the American Southwest. And Walt spent a lot of time on this one, and he was going to use the music of the Grand Canyon Suite as part of this film. And he thought about even doing this as a possible instrumental film like Fantasia.
Oh, wow.
But, they always try to say today that Walt was a racist and all that. And who else was doing films about American Indians in the 1940s?
Right. Man. I can see this one getting a rebirth.
Yeah.
Because it kind of fits, like, hey, it's an underrepresented group.
Yeah, but they'd make it woke. They did it today.
Fair.
I mean, look what they did with Pocahontas. All those Indian groups now, they're all claiming it's racist. And Disney worked with the Indian groups to make that film.
Oh, interesting.
So it's like that. Why even bother trying to be politically correct and woke? Because it's going to come back and burn you.
Yeah. That looks familiar.
Yeah, there was a short they did with an idea like that. And there was a short that they did in the 50s with Donald Duck where he's in the Grand Canyon.
Okay. All right. Next up on our list, Scruffy.
Now, Scruffy was one that Ken Andersen developed for 5 years in the 1970s, and it was based on a children's book. And it's set in World War II. It's about a Barnaby ape who lives on the Rock of Gibraltar. And that's all I have to say about it.
Oh, wow.
I couldn't find anything online to tell what the plot would have been. But I thought that picture there, that's great. All the monkeys sitting there for a birthday party with the balloons.
Yeah, I don't know what the plot is, but there's a lot of interesting art associated with it.
A lot of interesting art and ideas.
Man, there's something there. Okay.
He tried for 5 years to do something with it, and he couldn't find a story to do with that.
So that's interesting. Kind of learning about this process. It's almost like they make the art and then they try to figure out a story around it. It's almost like a band making the music and then
works that way.
Doing lyrics later.
It's like with the Gremlins, licensed that story, but then they tried to come up with their own original story they could say was based on it.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Little Broomstick.
This one's called The Little Broomstick, and it's kind of like a Harry Potter kind of a story. Oh. And this one would have come out in 1980. It's based on a novel for kids from 1971. And it was about a little girl named Mary who was led by a black cat and discovered a magical broomstick that took her to this world of witches and schools and things. And it was the training ground for witches. And then she gets kidnapped by a witch. And that's pretty much like a Harry Potter kind of idea.
Sure, yeah.
And that predated Harry Potter by almost 20 years.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And I guess there's an anime version of that came out recently, but I've never seen it or anything.
Okay. Hero from Otherwhere.
Yeah, this one, it was just based on a original idea from about two children who get sent to another planet while they're sitting in the principal's office.
Wait, that's an odd day.
This would have come out in 1977 against Star Wars if they'd made it. But it's such a unique thing for a Disney film,
Yeah, okay.
Wow. I don't know any more about it than that, but I just thought the artwork was kind of neat.
Oh, my goodness. That's a thing of nightmares right there.
Yeah, yes, it is. So is that one.
Yeah, okay. Ooh. All right, where are we at now? We're now at, I'll tell you. American Dog.
Now, this one was what the film Bolt became. It started out as this film called American Dog. And it was created by the same guys that did Lilo and Stitch. And it's about a dog named Henry, who's an actor in a show playing a spy. And he gets stranded out in the desert. And he thinks that his scripted life is his real life. So he's living out this spy adventure in real life. And he meets a giant radioactive rabbit and a cat with one eye, and he's got an eye patch. They go on a road trip through the West, and they're chased by a mutant zombie Girl Scout who wants to kill them.
Of course. I mean, that sounds... What year was this in production?
It would have been the early 2000s. And it got pretty far. And they end up in Vegas, and they're joined by this waitress that's dressed in a cat suit.
I see that.
And...
oh, wow. Look at that.
That's a turnaround. It's got pretty far. They built the models.
It did.
We have an animation test that I've linked to for this, too.
Okay. Oh, my goodness. There's that cat you were talking about.
With one eye, and he's got a skull and crossbone on his eye patch.
Boom.
And...
there's the cat chick.
Yeah.
Wow.
Her name was Jo, the maid.
Jo Knight. Okay.
She They end up in Vegas, and they get joined by this waitress, and he wants to do all these things. He doesn't know how to do them, like how to drive a car, because his life was scripted. And the moral of the story was he had to learn to defend for himself and not live off of free handouts.
There's the zombie.
Wait till you see the computer version of her.
Oh boy, must I?
Now she kind of reminds you of the.
Oh no!
Isn't that ugly?
That's scary.
It kind of reminds you of that girl in Finding Nemo, but the girl in Finding Nemo was cuter.
Yeah, that's right. At the dentist or something.
Now the reason this changed was because when John Lasseter got brought in to take over the animation studio, he kept telling them this was way too weird for a family audience.
All right, it looks weird, man.
And they refused to change it, so they ended up leaving the directors, and they went over to DreamWorks and they did How to Train Your Dragon.
Oh,
and the film was reworked as Bolt.
Saints fan, yeah, that's appropriate.
It sure would have been a weird looking movie.
No kidding. Wow.
But this is also kind of like that one called Wildlife that we talked about a couple weeks ago. It's just weird stuff. I mean, I have a hard time seeing how this could have been a Disney film, Disney animated feature.
Yeah, I don't even think today this looks like a Disney thing. Golly. Oh, hi. Whew. Okay. So they never made this when they left Disney, huh?
Well, no, because Disney, when they left, Disney owns the rights to the story.
Okay, I got you.
So they had to leave the story there.
Oh my goodness!
But when we get to the one called Gigantic, that one kind of ties with that too.
Weird, so weird.
Well, this is another thing too. The artists that are making films today, you look at all that old school artwork, how great it looked. It was very accessible, very likable. And now a lot of the artists today, they make a lot of artwork like this. It's weird.
Mm-hmm. That's a cool look.
Yeah. Well, it kind of reminds me of Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Well, that kind of it had that kind of 50s, 60s kishy kind of look to it.
That reminds me that's my neighborhood growing up as a kid in the South.
Did you see the dog sitting in the back of the truck?
Yeah, it's front yard of my neighbors. Boy. Oh, there we go. Yeah, there's that cat with the patch. Okay. And then
that's what Bolt became. Or became Bolt. And no one remembers Bolt today.
Yeah.
It's one of those ones that are forgotten.
Let's see here. My thing is not what's happening here. Okay, where did we leave off here? Time folder. Are we in was that the time folder?
It's in the time folder.
Oh, I'm sorry. The thing I got hung up there. American Dog, Frady Cat.
Now, Frady Cat was an Alfred Hitchcock genre kind of film that was done by the directors that did Aladdin, Little Mermaid, and Hercules, Treasure Planet. And it was the whole thing was going to be in the vein of an Alfred Hitchcock film. And the film was about a cat named Oscar and Karina the cockatoo. They're two spoiled pets, and they live in London in a flat. And one of the pets gets kidnapped, and Oscar is framed for the murder of this pet. And the two set on a mission to find who the real culprit is.
That's good work, huh?
Well, the reason it got shut down is because the head of animation at the time, he said no one knows who Alfred Hitchcock is, and he's a forgotten director.
Well, excuse me.
But I would disagree with that.
Mm-hmm. Man. Do we know how far along this got?
It only got into the planning stages, and when it got canceled, those directors left Disney. But they came back 6 months later when John Lasseter took over.
Oh.
And then they made Princess and the Frog.
Oh, okay. That's got a little bit of that Princess and the Frog feel there.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, okay. Interesting. Again, reminder, this is Disney, the Disney that never was. These are lost movies characters, that just never made it to fruition. Boy. When you do something like this, I mean, are you kind of employed by Disney until they
Well,
say we're done with you? Or?
their staff does it, and they hire you on a contract. You're there for so many years, or project by project.
Yeah.
Okay. There's Alfred Hitchcock. He would have probably had a cameo because he always cameoed in his own films.
Gotcha.
And Alfred Hitchcock, he was probably the only director that was recognized at that time when he was alive, because he had Alfred Hitchcock Presents, and he presented each week, just like Walt Disney presented his show every week.
Mm-hmm. Now it looks like we're heading into Mort.
Now, Mort was done by the same directors, and this film is based on a book by Terry Pratchett. And the story is about Death's apprentice falling in love with a girl that he was supposed to reap her soul.
All right. So far, that's an interesting setup.
It was supposed to be in the vein of a Monty Python kind of comedy. This would have been made after Princess and the Frog.
Uh-huh.
Now, the artists that worked on this told me they just loved this project because it was just so goofy.
Yeah.
And the reason it didn't get made is the agent for Terry Pratchett wanted Disney to license his entire body of work. And Disney was just interested in this one story, so they just shut down the hand-drawn animation department over this.
Overplayed his hand, huh?
Yeah, and someone told me that they wondered if that lawyer realized he's the person that killed Disney hand-drawn animation.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
They made Moana instead of making that, so that probably would have come out where Moana did, and it would have been hand-drawn.
I see.
And I see they announced they're going to have Moana 2 now because they're losing all this money on all these films that no one wants to see. They have Toy Story 5 got announced, and Moana 2, and a whole bunch of sequels.
Wow.
But I'm not really interested in those either.
Yeah.
Now, Giants it recently got canceled. It got announced that it would have come out after Zootopia, and it was the story of Jack and the Beanstalk. And it was about when Jack goes up the beanstalk, he finds a little girl, and because the little girl is the giant. And they had the same songwriters as Frozen and Coco. And
did this ever get advertised or promoted somewhere?
It got announced. I have pictures of it there where it gets announced that they were going to make this.
I think I remember seeing something along that line.
They quietly canceled it. But where John Lasseter's at with his studio, the same people that were going to make this film, they're making a version of Jack and the Beanstalk there. So I don't know how much of it's going to be based on this idea.
I don't know where I would have seen like a trailer or something, but this seems incredibly familiar. Do you know where it was advertised?
Well, they announced it at their D23 event, and that's what those photos are from, but it has artwork behind them from it. So that's why I put those in there.
Interesting. I would not have seen it at the D23 event. I'll tell you that.
But that got very far. Drop my mic. That got very far in production.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yep. You're good.
Okay. That got very far in production, and there's even a little cameo in Zootopia where they're selling a bootleg based on that movie. But it's called Gigantic because they have to have every movie now has to be one descriptive word like that instead of a actual title.
Right. Okay.
Now this one they were going to do a version of Chicken Little with Mickey, Donald, and Goofy.
Oh, interesting.
And that's the only picture I have of that. Don't know anything about the plot. That's Jiminy Cricket there. Ken Andersen drew that.
Very cool. All right. What's next here? Now inside the Mickey folder.
Yeah, there's
Mickey
a couple
Columbus.
sub-ones.
Okay.
Just pop them up and I'll tell you what you're seeing.
Here's Mickey Columbus.
Mickey Columbus, that was going to be made in conjunction with the 500th anniversary of Columbus discovering America. and that started under Ron Miller, and Eisner canceled it because they don't like Columbus,
I was just about to say it almost snuck through, didn't it?
Yeah, almost stuck through it. It almost got through. It would have come out right after Prince and the Pauper. They decided not to do Mickey shorts because they didn't make any money because they had to package them with the features. Pete would have been King Ferdinand. Clarabelle Cowell was Queen Isabella. And I had in that book of Disney songs that didn't make it. I've had three books of Disney songs that didn't make it. There's a song from that in one of those books about the world being round. It's from this production they didn't make.
Okay, let's see what's next here. Pilgrim Mickey.
This would have been the story of Thanksgiving, where Mickey Mouse was a pilgrim, and he.
What year was this?
This was actually in Walt's time this started, but there
Oh.
was a time they try to revive this in the 80s. And they end up both chasing after the same turkey, and then the Indian saves Mickey's nephews.
Oh,
But
wow.
these are the only images I could find of this one. But I put this in here because it's an American history story.
Mm-hmm.
And you know how they don't do American history stories anymore.
Right. That's why I'm surprised that this didn't make it, and this was during Walt's time.
Well, they probably couldn't figure out a story that worked. There were other shorts they did in Walt's time that didn't get made. We're going to do one about the building of Mount Rushmore because that was going on at the time. There was Mickey, Donald, and Goofy building Mount Rushmore, and all the shenanigans they could get into while they're up on the mountain chiseling the faces.
Okay. Let's see here. How do I get out of this?
Well, there's one there, Swabbies.
Let's see here. Yep, got it.
That one would have come out after Sports Goofy in the 80s, and that one's
Sports Goofy. I've forgotten about Sports Goofy.
I linked to it last week.
Okay, cool.
Or the week before. But Sports Goofy, the same team was going to do another one called Swabbies. And it was the characters were in the military and the Navy.
Uh-huh.
And that's why it didn't get made, because Eisner took over and it was shut down.
Of course. Boy. What's the production? Is that 2532? What is that number?
Every production is assigned a different number so they could go look up all the artwork when they need it.
Okay.
And so that's always the number associated with Swabbies is 2532.
I got you now. Interesting.
When a production was assigned a number, that meant that it was they were serious about making it.
Oh wow, okay.
Sometimes they would come up with ideas, but they wouldn't assign a production number because it didn't go anywhere. But once they got a production number, that meant they were serious about doing it.
Okay. Next up, it looks like it's Newt.
This is a Pixar film that got announced that they didn't make because the premise is similar to Rio that came out. And the story is about these two, they're blue-toed newts, something like that.
Okay.
And they're the last surviving couple on Earth. They don't like each other, but science wants them to mate.
Oh, no, what are we doing?
But they recorded this, and the cast, Ben Stiller was Newt. William Shatner was one of the characters. Now, he was supposed to, I think that was the one that the Shatner character was my theory. That's who that was. And William Shatner was supposed to be in WALL-E to be the live action guy that built the spaceship. That they show it's Fred Willard in the movie. But if you look at the storyboards for that, he talks like Shatner with the spaces between the words. Shatner turned it down. But he went to work on Newt. And they end up falling in love by the end of the story after they go on an adventure together. And the reason they didn't do it was because of Rio. And that's from Rio, and that was going to be directed by Gary Rydstrom. He does all the sound effects for Pixar. And people that saw it, they liked it, but they said that that's why it got shut down. And Lasseter wouldn't bring it back because of being so close to the Fox movie. They don't like to repeat themselves or other things. Now, this is that movie we talked about before. This is from Wildlife.
Strange stuff.
Now, if you look at these characters, this is like what it looks like in real life in 2024 with all these woke people.
Yeah, what year was this again?
1999, 2003, somewhere in there.
Woke people.
That's the one that Roy Jr. shut this down because of all the flamboyantly gay characters, and it had the joke, I'd never crawled out of a manhole before. One of the gay characters said it when he crawled out of a sewer. And Roy stopped playing the movie. He's like, we don't make films like this at Disney.
Right.
I mean, see, that's the elephant dressed like a hooker. And she's singing on stage for the context there.
Okay.
The story was like a My Fair Lady, where those two characters at the beginning, they try to make this elephant into the superstar. And then they want to destroy her afterwards because it makes a fool of pop culture. And this was all set in the 1970s. So these people look like they're people you'd see on the street today.
I know.
But this movie was set in the 1970s.
Oh, gosh. And what was the name of this again?
Wildlife. And in one of our shows, I linked to an article. There was a 2-part article Floyd Norman wrote because he worked on this. And All the historians, they won't tell you that why it was shut down. They'll just say it had mature themes to it.
Mm.
But it had all these flamboyantly gay characters, all this raunchy humor and jokes, things like that. But it's very telling that Roy shut it down. He didn't have it sent to Touchstone Pictures or a different division of Disney for adults. He saw no merit in this project at all.
Okay, let's see. Princess Academy.
Now, this one got shut down. This was a short that it had all of the princess characters in it, all the female characters from the Disney films.
Interesting.
It was going to be a short, and the reason it got shut down had to do with some of the people behind it were involved in some scandalous things. I don't want to say what they were.
Oh, boy. Okay.
But that's why it didn't happen. And if you look for the artist that did this, he does a lot of Rainbow Jihad art of the Disney princes, not the princesses, but the princes.
Oh, no. Okay.
But then there was some scandal where the two guys that worked on this, they got into a fight, and one of them's pointing out that one's from Israel or something, and I don't really understand what the problem is with that.
Okay.
And see, all those characters in their films, they played the piano, so all those characters had tea in their films, so they have them with tea.
Oh, wow.
Alan Menken would have wrote a song for this or a musical piece for this, but it would have been like a short with all of the princess characters together, all the female characters.
This actually looks like it has potential, man.
Everyone was really angry this got shut down.
Yeah, I mean, Princess Academy. So this is where Disney princesses go to learn their craft, huh?
Yeah, and where they go to hang out together.
Hang out or something. It's almost like the Heisman House if you ever watch college football, yeah.
But if they made this today, it would all be woke. They'd all be talking about how they don't need a man and
yeah.
Down with the patriarchy. This was around 2009, 2010, somewhere in there.
Man.
The only reason these storyboards are out there is the artist that did them. He has them on his one of his pages. He has a little logo there, the Princess Academy, and he has his credit there. So we make sure he gets credit. But I just thought this was a great little project that got canceled.
No kidding, man. My goodness, that's a lot of.
I have two we don't have pictures for.
Okay,
so there's even two more. They've tried to work in 1968. They tried to work on the Bremen Town Musicians, and that's the story with the animals that form a band.
Yeah. Yep.
And I have the plot to this one, but no artwork. The plot would have opened up on a map of Europe, and the narrator explains that this was the cradle of where immortal music came from: Bach, Beethoven, Mozart. And he introduces all these great musicians. Then he shows they show the four aging animals, and they've outlived their usefulness, and they're going to be killed by their masters. So they decide to form a rock and roll band. Because this would have been 68. You had all of the rock and roll music starting to come in.
Mm-hmm.
And they get hooked up with a character named Toby the Tinker, and he has a literal tin ear. And he wants to marry the Burgomeister's daughter, and her name was Gretel. And he turns the animals into a mod band. And then Gretel gets kidnapped by the man her father wants her to marry, and Toby and the animals save her. And they make tin ears for everyone in the community except for the Burgomeister. I want to say Burgermeister Meisterburger.
That's what I'm thinking, yeah.
But the right word is Burgomeister. So he makes a tin ear for everybody to enjoy the music, except for the Burgomeister. And he explains the reason everyone has a tin ear, because you had to have an ear for it. And the music took hundreds of years to catch on. And that got canceled because the committee that was running the studio after Walt died, they said it was too contemporary. They didn't want anything to do with rock and roll music. And that's why the song in the Jungle Book with the Beatles, that one got changed. But you'll get to hear it in our links there.
Okay.
And,
don't forget the description down below. All these links he's referring
sometime
to.
this afternoon it will show up.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one I have is Hansel and Gretel. And Walt made a short of that in 1932, but they wanted to make it into a feature, and work for that began in the 50s and 60s. And the script for it was written by A.J. Carruthers, who collaborated with the Sherman Brothers, and Sherman Brothers wrote songs for this musical, but didn't get made. And the plot would have been that Hansel and Gretel's father, he gets seduced by a witch who wants to control. Somehow she's going to rule the world if she marries their father. Hansel and Gretel get on her plans. So she creates the trap with the gingerbread house to entice them. And in this version, she doesn't get pushed into the oven. She slips and falls in the oven, and she gets baked into a gingerbread cookie. And if you read the actual fairy tale, it's a lot harsher. She gets shoved in the oven and baked into a cookie.
Yeah.
And they tried a version with Mickey Mouse, and that didn't work either, and that got canceled in the planning stages.
Okay, there you have it. So, Ed, what do we have to look forward to for part 7 a week from today at
Well,
11 a.m. Eastern?
Next week, I'm going to talk about the people that worked with Walt. A lot of people did this artwork, and I'm going to get through as many of them as we can. It'll be kind of like this format, and I'll just give you little thumbnail stories on each one and what characters they worked on. Because you know the characters, but you don't know the people behind them. And like one of the stories I'm going to show you is the animator who did the fairy godmother in Cinderella. He based that character on his wife, but he aged her up what she would look like as an old lady.
Oh, I bet she loved that. She appreciated it, right?
She actually did, because she was involved in charities.
Okay.
And when she actually was an old woman, she was known as the fairy godmother of Hollywood, because she would call these. She had a Rolodex of all these actors and things. She'd call them up for different causes.
All right, very cool.
Did anyone have any questions about the Disney?
Oh gosh,
I'm surprised we got through them all.
Yeah, I mean you're
well, we had like
superhero.
30 projects we went through today.
Yeah, let's see. I don't know if there's any questions. I'm literally scrolling through looking for question marks now. Yeah, I don't know. If anybody has any questions, post them now, and let's see if Ed can get you an answer here. Otherwise, comment or look. There's Ed's Twitter handle. Tag him on Twitter at real_Ed_McCray. You're good at.
Yeah, I always reply back. Sure. I've made some new friends by people that contacted me that way from these shows we've been doing.
I love it. I love it.
Friends for life.
Yeah, absolutely. So
we have a good audience from the Blaze.
Let's see. I guess the chat might be having some issues there, according to Danny K, at least on her end. So, but be sure to either post a comment underneath this video. Ask your question there, Ed.
Yeah, I usually respond to those
to that. Okay, yep. Or like I said on Twitter at real_Ed_McCray, and please do share this episode and all of them. And Rob has put all of these episodes in a playlist. I think they're in order now, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't know. I haven't looked at it.
Okay,
okay. They weren't a couple days ago because I linked to it.
Yeah,
I sent it to Elon Musk when he put that thing out to see if we could get him to tweet it out.
Oh, that'd be helpful.
Or if he would tweet about getting Song of the South in the National Film Registry.
Yeah, we got to keep trying to tag Elon Musk on that National Film Registry. In fact, why don't you do this in the comments in the description below, and maybe in the comments, Ed, put a link to that a National Film Registry. What Ed is trying to do, and it's genius, is we're trying to force Disney to acknowledge Song of the South by getting it nominated and hopefully into the National Film Registry, which, if I'm not mistaken, is run by the Library of Congress. And so this would be a very big deal for a film to be basically set aside as being important to American culture and history.
In theory, this is why the National Film Registry exists, because it's to preserve films from being erased from existence. And Disney not only erased the film from existence, but all references to the film from existence.
Yeah.
And I think if it gets on there, and assuming they'll allow it, because who knows if it's woke people running it, because like they have the National Archives, they put disclaimers that the Constitution, the Bill of Rights are offensive language, things like that. If it gets onto the registry, I think Floyd Norman should accept the award, because he's been pushing for Song of the South, ever since they've been going after it, all the way back in the 80s.
Yeah, hold on. Big Tech makes a great point. Hit that like button. That's right. Yeah. I never do say that. Hit that like button, y'all, and that way other people will discover. And then to your point about Song of the South and making sure that the National Film Registry is aware of it or sets it aside. That's also really the point of doing these episodes, this series with Ed, is to now there is going to be a place forever that you can go and see this Disney stuff. If you haven't seen episodes 1 through 5, I would encourage you to go back and check those out, because there's so much history that needs to be saved. And they're erasing it. They're changing it and they're erasing it. And so, Ed, I appreciate all the stuff you're doing.
That's why I spent 3 days scanning things. Because this episode we just had, you aren't going to find this information anywhere officially from Disney. They don't put all this stuff together.
No, you're absolutely right. Well, all right. Well, God bless you, Ed. Thank you so much. We'll see you guys a week from today on what is that? That's Saturday, February 17th at 11 a.m. Eastern. We'll do this all over again for part 7. And thanks for all the comments and for being a part of this. Please share it.
Thank you very much.
Please subscribe. Please click the bell so that you're notified when we go live. And we'll see you guys a week from now. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great weekend wherever you are.